Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Now, former Public Protector Thuli Madonsela has heaped praise on Chief Justice Raymond Zondo and his team. This for their investigation of state capture allegations. Madonsela says they provided a vivid picture of how some key institutions were hijacked for private gain. She joins us now to reflect on the last few years since she recommended that an inquiry be set up. Well, after so many years, we finally come to the end of the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. Of course, this coming from the recommendations that you had made as soon as you saw that there was some state capture there. But what do you say to people who say the inquiry should have also investigated the judiciary and how some politicians were able to get away with crime with the judiciary there?
I would say they should launch a separate investigation. This report has taken a long time, Masakha, primarily because it was settled with issue creeps. It's the same way if somebody is being investigated as a killer and we know who he's alleged to have killed, we normally investigate that and conclude that and have those people brought to book. I've never heard people saying, let's not investigate this murder because there are 30 other murders that have happened in the country, and therefore, until then, things must come to a standstill.
So do you feel that this report so far exonerates you, especially from those who used to detract you back in those days and say that you're part of a conspiracy, possibly against the former president?
Well, I do know that whoever accused me of being biased didn't mean it. That was the strategy, as advised by Bell Pottinger and many of their advisors. They knew the truth. They knew that if I was evil, I didn't need to invent things against President Zuma. I investigated him on Nkandla when he told Parliament that government never built him a house. I found differently because I believed his explanation. If that doesn't convince you of my objectiveness, nothing can do so. But back to the state capture report. It does vindicate the whistleblowers, particularly Mcebisi Jonas, who told us that the Minister of Finance, whose dismissal cost this country billions of rand, had been dismissed at the influence of the Guptas, and to make sure that the interests of the Guptas and the president's son were protected insofar as state procurement system, government policies on procurement, and law enforcement.
But also, you know, there's something, I just want to pick your brain about something. You know, I'm sure you know, Advocate, that during the course of this week, when the Chief Justice was a bit late in terms of handing over the report, there were a lot of talks about him and the President and their relationship or not relationship therein, etc. There's something that former Judge Bernard Mwepe wrote in his recent book that he released, where he talks specifically about, you know, politicians being able to choose the judges or be part of the process of the judges that would sit on inquiries such as this one and the dangers thereof, etc. You know, I'm interested to know your opinion when it comes to that and the fact that, you know, politicians such as the President especially are able to choose who sits in, you know, for instance, the Constitutional Court and inquiries as well that investigate government itself.
You are absolutely right that ideally nobody should choose their own judge and nobody should be a judge in their own cause. And to a certain extent, therefore, the system is flawed. But in this particular case, you will recall that the current president had nothing to do with the selection of Justice Zondo. He was selected by the former Chief Justice and was accepted then by the then president and appointed by that president. About the delay, that was just being mischievous. And I've addressed several meetings, particularly two just before the State Capture Commission report was released, that the public should expect that a lot will be done forthwith to cast aspersions on Justice Zondo and many others. What I didn't see coming was dragging the current president into it and having his matter as the dead cat that is trying to take our eyes off the ball, that is state capture. And I want to say to South Africans, state capture is not just about money. If it was about money, we could be justified to be relaxed in that it's said that the Kokotlaminis won't get the toilets, the schools, the roads, and everything that they need if we lose money. But what we're seeing from the picture that Justice Zondo paints with this report is not just the hijacking of the public procurement system, it's the hijacking of our state and therefore the undermining of democracy. We're seeing a handful of people, the president, his son, and the Guptas, deciding who gets appointed where, deciding which tender should be issued, deciding on what the state security agency should be doing. It should be worrying to us as South Africans, and we should be watching this process and exercising our social accountability to ensure that the wrongdoers who perpetrated state capture are brought to book, and that nothing like this ever happens again in our precious democracy.
And it's quite interesting what you said earlier in terms of bringing in the current president, and not necessarily exonerating him. I mean, we have a politician within the ANC, and I don't want to drag you into the factions of the ANC, but, Tony Ngeni actually took Zondo to court. He filed papers to the High Court saying that he doesn't understand why the current president was exonerated in previous volumes. And, a lot of us as South Africans would say he's right, because the current president was his deputy, was Jacob Zuma's deputy at the time, and he also had, something, he could have done something, and the report this time, or volume 5 this time, saying he hasn't given evidence of what he says he tried to do. But let me not drag you into ANC politics, etc. I'm just interested to know what you think about Zondo's recommendation in volume 5 that the constitution should be changed for the electorate to vote directly for their president and not a political party. What do you think about that?
Of course, it is a recommendation because it's not up to the Commission to order the changing of the Constitution. It does seem to be a step in the right direction, and it is in line with this idea of electoral reform. And the good thing about democracy is that it's a concept with a lot of plasticity, and you can mold it to meet the challenges of your time. And electing the president directly is a step in the right direction. But I would also add that what we need, though, also is a public involvement in the removal of the president. Let's say Parliament votes to impeach the president. I would like that to be subject to be a referendum. Because if you look at what happened to President Beki, is that a president who wants to act to ensure that wrongdoers are brought to book might find themselves walking a perilous journey if too many people are affected, and then they could use the impeachment process to get rid of him, which takes me to the first question. I do want to respond to that question. Okay. I tweeted yesterday just genuinely about the need for us to work together to make sure that wrongdoers are brought to book. And Mr. Yangeni said to me, I must shut up. That's very twisted. President Ramaphosa was a deputy. Those who are honest about working in government would know that deputies have zero power whatsoever. And deputies, and I can't speak loudly, publicly, against the incumbent. And those who are speaking loudly, I investigated Midval, for example, where a councillor was fired by his own party because instead of talking internally, he went public. So, but also we shouldn't confuse here people who pillaged our money, who captured our institutions and repurposed them to do their personal bidding, and bystanders or colleagues who we think could have raised their voices a little bit louder. The people who should be on trial at the court of public opinion and in the criminal justice system are those who stole from the people of South Africa, who destroyed our institutions, who hijacked our state, and have placed our democracy in a perilous position to the extent that we face the possibility of becoming a failed state.
Well, thank you so much for speaking to us, Advocate Thuli Madonsela. Of course, her 355-page report back then into state capture and Nkandla, etc., is what led to the State Capture Commission of Inquiry actually being established. And now we, after about 6-7 years, we are at the end of that road.